The next morning I got up, I did Shachrit morning prayers, and then I drove to the Israeli embassy where we called together a group called the committee. The committee was the 20 most educated people in this population of, at the time, about 15,000 people still left. Now, we had worked this out by JDC on our computer system, so that each person had 4 people they were supposed to give a message to. Each of those 4 people had another 4 people, and so on. And so we could get a message out to inside the population really fast. And so they went out and they told everybody, drop everything, get yourself to the Israeli embassy, don't bring any suitcases. Of course, they didn't have much anyway. Don't bring any suitcases, don't bring any bags, just bring your kids and any x-rays that you may have, because they kept their x-rays at home. My job that day was getting people out of the hospitals. And so I drove across the city to the hospital there. And there's a hospital there, which is the leprosy hospital. There was a kid named Mandefro Alamu who had both tuberculosis and leprosy, 2 mycobacterial diseases. So I was able to try to get him out, but then the doctors who were doing rounds said, no way, like, you need permission of the director. So I went to the director and I said, listen, I didn't want to tell him that the largest airlift in world history was starting in a couple of hours. So I said, there's a special flight to Israel this day with the Israeli embassy, and this kid is included, so I want to take him. So he said, you need a letter from his mother. I had no idea who his mother was. So I said, well, how about a letter from the Israeli ambassador, because he's really the ultimate guardian. He said, that would be fine. So I got the Israeli ambassador on the phone and I said, can you fax us over a letter? And he said, no, our fax machine is down. So what am I going to do? I went back and the doctors were in a different part of the hospital. I picked up this kid, put him over my shoulder, and I ran as fast as I could. You know, Ethiopians were running after me, and Ethiopians are good runners. But I got to my car before they did. And I went as fast as I could. I drove out. They were running after me, and I put them on the floor of my clinic. Now, I had with me a guy who's an Israeli journalist whose name is Boaz Bismuth. Boaz is now like Israeli ambassador to one of the Arab countries. The day before, he and I were in the Hilton together. And I had a woman who had just arrived back in Ethiopia from Sudan, who was pregnant with twins. And she had malaria from the Sudan, and she was really anemic, and she needed to get a blood transfusion. Well, in Ethiopia, they don't have a tradition of donating blood the way we do. We consider it our civic duty, whether our family needs it or not. Ethiopians are terrified of donating blood. And so it was impossible to get Ethiopians to donate blood. I went up to a shoeshine boy, and I said to the shoeshine boy, I want you to donate blood for me. I said, how much money do you make in a day, or in a week? And he said, $3. I said, fine, I will give you $15. And I really wanted to make it worthwhile for this guy. I said, come with me. So we went to the blood bank, and he saw this huge bag of blood that was coming out. He imagined like he's giving 3 kidneys or something. And so he refused. So I said, well, I know I'm happy to give my own blood, but they're not going to take 2 units from me. So I went back into the Hilton Hotel, and I couldn't see anyone that I knew except for Boaz. And I said to Boaz, Boaz, I need your blood. Come with me. And he said, no, I'm a reporter. Tomorrow's going to be a really busy day. I'm not donating blood. And I screamed at him really loud, and I said, there's a pregnant woman who's going to die, and you're worried about being tired tomorrow? And he looked at me, and he said, my wife is pregnant. And so he came, and he donated blood. And he wrote about it the next day, because he was in the car with me when I carried this kid out. By the end of the day, I had like 14 people on the floor of my clinic. Now, some amazing, like really miraculous stuff happened that day. Just listen to this. I went to a hospital to get a kid with meningitis. And this kid was there. It was a room like maybe 20% the size of this, with about 30 kids on the walls, on tables on the walls around. And I said to the mom, today we can go to Israel, let's go. Thinking that she would say, yeah, let's go. She said, my brother, this is 10 in the morning, she said, my brother said to meet him at 3 in the afternoon, I'm not leaving. And I said, okay, I'll lie. So I said, your brother is waiting for you at the Israeli embassy, let's go. And she said, no, I'm not leaving. And everybody else around said, can we go, can we go, can we go? And I said, no, I'm sorry. So what am I going to do? I go back to the Israeli embassy, and I park about half a mile away because there's thousands of people streaming in. If you saw what was going on that day, it reminded me of the Haftorah that we read from Jeremiah. Jeremiah talks about the 4 groups of people who are going to go to Israel and make Israel a great nation. Who are these 4 people? Jeremiah doesn't talk about Jewish doctors from Syosset. Okay? According to Jeremiah, it's the blind, it's the lame, it's pregnant women, and women in labor. And that's who you saw going into the Israeli embassy that day. And so I went in, and I did what I had to do. I walked out. There were thousands of people around, and some guy taps me on the shoulder. I turned around and I said, Mindano, what do you want? And he said, Doc, you got to help me. My sister's in the hospital. Her kid has meningitis, and I'm here. What should I do? I said, you're the one I want. Come with me. And he got in the car. We drove to the hospital. He just stood at the door. She looked up. She said, okay. And then she came. True story. So at the end of the day, we sat there. They were in my hospital, my clinic, which I had a very big office at the time. It was like the living room of a house. And everybody was on their homemade mattresses. And I was writing medical summaries. And my head nurse came along. She said, Dr. Rick, you made a mistake. I said, really? What did I do wrong? And she said, these people are hungry. They got to eat. Well, this is May of 1991. In April of 1991 was Passover. And as JDC does all over the world, we sent in a large quantity of matzah. Okay? The matzah didn't arrive, or it wasn't cleared until 10 days after Passover had ended. So we had a huge container with 10,000 boxes of matzah. So we opened up this container, and everybody got a couple of boxes of matzah. Okay? Now, Mr. Slim Fast had donated thousands of packets of Slim Fast to us, and so we gave everybody Slim Fast. And I thought, look at this. You know, in our tradition, in our Passover, we eat matzah to remember the Exodus, and they're having their Exodus today, and they're eating matzah. Of course, this is 1991, so they get Slim Fast as well. And then we drove them to the airport. We put them on the planes, and they flew to Israel. That day, 39 planes flew in. They were empty when they arrived. They filled up with people, and 747, which was empty, filled up with 1,079 people. By the time it landed in Israel, it had 1,080 because a baby was born. And in fact, that day we had 8 babies born. And I left on one of the last planes. I went off and I identified patients with tuberculosis, and then I came back because we had a whole other group that missed the action. They were a group from Quara. Quara is located between Lake Tana and the Sudan border. And we had a whole other operation for them. Now,